It's one of my favorite times of the week to come in and talk to all you lovely practitioners. Hey, Lori's in the house. Bruno, so glad that you're here. I know you don't have a mic, I can tell, but you're welcome to join us in the chat if you like. Hi, everybody. Hi, it's one of my favorite times of the week. Training Tuesdays. I think, Lori, I think you and I are going to come up with another word because we call it Tuesday Tidbit Training Tuesdays something. I feel like a new word's coming. We're gonna brand this. It's gonna be good. But our intention here on Tuesdays at this time every week is to serve both movement and manual practitioners in whatever functional anatomy or client work you've got going on. It's always a juicy conversation. It always goes by fast. And even though we're here for an hour, it never feels like that to me. We're here live every week, and then also the replays are available for you too. And if you're watching on the replay, please let us know that. I love to know that you're here and what your takeaways are, what your ahas are. And obviously, of course, any questions or input. I really love the input. One of the things that we have in our student lounge this week, I put a case study in our student lounge, and there's been some weigh-ins on what we think might be going on and what we get to do with that client. And so we're going to talk some case studies today and some client work today for a couple reasons, because that's what I've been hearing all week as I've been really enjoying some one-on-one training calls with all of you who put yourselves on my calendar, which I love. And so if you've not met me before, I'm your host. I'm your host and your trainer for the hour. I'm Gina Schatz. I am both a manual and movement practitioner. I'm also an education provider, and I love to pour into practitioners to teach them what they get to know so that they can have amazing results with the work that they do with clients, one-on-one, group, and everything in between. What would be in between? Small group. Okay. So I developed the Schatz method, and the way I like to describe that is it's clinically researched. So it's my clinical results, which is why we got to trademark it, because it actually does do something different, which makes me super excited. And the reason I love sharing it with other practitioners is because really awesome, like amazingly talented practitioners are out there in the world, and I get to make them experts. So it makes me super happy to see what you guys are up to and how I can support you and just taking it up a notch. So that's what we're here for on Tuesdays, a piece of that as well. And today, as I mentioned, I want to talk to you guys about some case studies or some client work. And, and we're going to explore the conversation as we go. I would love to invite you to add your questions either here in the chat or come off mic, or if you want to come on camera for a minute and we can smile at each other, that would also be great. Not mandatory, but I do love connecting with you. So please do connect here in any way that works for you. And my experience with practitioners is that we always have client questions, right? Because like that's what we're doing. We're working with clients. So out of the gate, if you have a client question, please add that to the chat or come off mic or come on camera and let me know what that is so I can address it specifically. Kind of putting you on the spot. Lori, I can see you're processing like, what is my client question for today? And if you don't have one yet, not yet, totally okay. You can formulate it as we go. Here's what I want to share with you guys about client work. First of all, I'm your biggest fan. I want you to do client work. I want you to experience purposeful contentment as you're working with clients. I want your clients to have your wizardry as their experience. Hey, Laura, nice to see you. And I personally, I'm a little selfish about that because I want the whole world to live pain-free and have like this amazing experience while they're here in this body. So we don't get to ride around in this sack for too long. And so I want us to like have a really joyful ride. So it's a win-win, right? Like you doing client work and successful client work and feeling really good about it means that you win and your clients win. And then I get lit up by that as well. So I want you to know from the start of our conversation that I am a fan of you doing client work. Successful client work where you feel purposeful. So I'm starting with that because my experience this week talking to a couple of you, several of you actually, has been that maybe that gets lost in translation, meaning my intention for you in client work gets lost in translation. So let me just reassure us that I'm a huge fan of you doing client work and having huge success and feeling really purposeful and contented in the work that you do, satisfied. And here's where I think the fork in the road comes, or the clash maybe in my intention versus how to create that. There just isn't a straight answer. Right? Yeah, Laura, you're like, yeah, I know. I got it. Laura, you leaned in for a minute. You're like, oh, I already heard that. I already know. Okay, good. I'm glad. Sometimes we forget that though, when we're really struggling with a client, a particular client, we're not making any bandwidth. We're not creating results that we want. Client keeps coming back and we feel like it might be a little bit of Groundhog's Day or whatever comes up for you that, sort of takes you out of your confidence game and your purpose game. And I get it. I'm just as frustrated as the next practitioner when I can't solve the problem. I would not describe myself as a competitive person, but I like to win. I like results. I like to feel heroic at the end of whatever it is that I'm doing, especially with my work, right? I want to get it. I want to knock it out of the park. I want a home run every time. So I get it. I feel you for sure. And my intent with training practitioners, I think is getting, I don't know, I don't want to make up stories, but I believe that there's probably some trainings out there that will sound like they have the answer. And the reason I believe that is because I went to those trainings, right? I've been at this game for several decades and I was like, okay, this will be it. This one last course, this one last weekend workshop, this one teacher knows something I don't know. And yes, all of that's true. All of those trainings have something for us. There's no training that's superfluous. Absolutely not. And every time a client walks into our setting, when we're working with them, it's a pop quiz. It's a pop quiz. It's like, how much do you know to be able to ace this? And it doesn't mean that you didn't participate in the last workshop that you went with. It means that it's who knows who wrote the quiz question. Right? Based on what? At least when you take a quiz at the end of a course, it's based on this course content. These are the questions that align with that course content. But when a client walks in, it's like all the content of everything about the body all at once, and you don't have any idea what the quiz question is going to be. Right? So you got to kind of think about it from that perspective, which I get can feel hella overwhelming. But there's some ways to cut through that, and I want to share them with you today. Several times this week, I was asked, so I have a client who's showing up with X, Y, and Z, and what do you think? And I love the question. I love the question because it's clear, it's concise, it's, you want a result, and also that you trust me to weigh in. Who wouldn't want that? That sounds amazing. And sometimes it is just a matter of, well, have you thought of this? Oh my gosh, I totally forgot. No, I didn't freaking think. That's right in front of my face. Or gosh, I do remember that, but boy, it's been a minute since I took that training. Or, wow, I tried that once and it didn't work and I sort of set it aside. So every once in a while, that really works. Have you thought of this? But the truth is that we can't really give each other, even me, no matter whether you're, licensed to train or not, you can't really give each other information about a client that you're not assessing. You can give another practitioner information about where they might want to go to find that answer, but it's really not safe, and please stop if you're already doing this, for a practitioner to say, look, I have a client with this click in their shoulder, and then you say, well, go do X. And then that practitioner does it. What if that's absolutely not what that client needs and they hurt them? There's huge liability in that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Have you thought of this? Have you tried that? It sounds like, but to state the answer as if a command is at play is it's casual and can be costly. So don't do that. And so when we have conversations in this manner, it's not like I'm holding back information like I know and you don't, and I'm just trying to cover my ass. It's not like that. It's I don't have enough information to give you an answer. And that's really where I love to pour into practitioners. Because if I can support you in getting all the information you need from the body and the person that's in front of you, you will sort it out. You'll sort it out. You won't have to ask. You'll sort it out. And that's really where the most power is. Otherwise, it's like playing darts with every single person that comes in. Try to hit the bullseye, try to hit them. You just keep throwing it, trying to hope that something works. But if you have a way of just strategically coming up with, this is what I know, this is what the body is showing me, and this is how I get results, and this is where I'm taking them to create those results, then your formula is there. And so each one of those steps requires some thought and some training, and it doesn't take forever, but it takes some thought. So I'm going to break down those steps. Okay. Like I said, every once in a while you can get lucky and just like you were confused or sort of overwhelmed, and someone says, well, have you thought of X, Y, and Z? And you're like, oh my God, it was right there. Most of the time, that's not true. Okay. So when practitioners ask me questions, these are the questions I ask back. The question will be sort of specific. I have a client who's presenting with this in their shoulder or that in their knee, or one hip's doing something different than the other, something specific. And my question back is, what else is going on? Meaning we want to look at the body as a whole. It's one of the gifts that we have as practitioners and not doctors and not physical therapists that are by law needing to like zero in on one spot. We have free range to work holistically. That's a benefit. It's also a benefit to look at one joint at a time post-surgery. So no shade at physical therapists. If I just came out of knee replacement surgery, I don't want you tinkering with my elbow. Like, please let my, please restore my hinge joint at my knee back to, full throttle, because I need it to walk and do all kinds of other things. So there's definite benefit in zeroing in, and there's also benefit in working holistically. And the work that we're up to as manual and movement practitioners is to work holistically. So we know lots of reasons why that's important. More than 80% of the pain in the body is referred from somewhere else. So it's not likely that the spot that your client came with is where it's at. So number one, you got to look holistically. The body creates compensation and recruitment patterns. Those are two different things, and you need to know what they are. And that means that it's coming from somewhere else, not in that one spot. And there's probably a connection or an answer to the connection, or a connection to the answer, actually, somewhere else, if you just step back and look at the whole thing. Now, I believe, then you guys tell me if this is true. I believe that that whole, like everywhere in the body can feel like overwhelming. Yeah, okay. Okay, I totally get it. So that you guys are actually supporting my point. We don't want to leave you with A equals B. They come in with X, you check Y. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is pour into you in the whole system so that you can sit back and look at the whole thing like a Monet and actually appreciate the whole work of art, knowing that there's individual parts that to contend with, but the whole picture is what you're looking at and appreciating. Because baseline, in order for us to restore function and eliminate pain, we've got to know the whole body and how it's designed and where we're taking them. So it doesn't do us any good to want to get rid of pain and only have the capacity to look at one spot, or to take ourselves out of the game and panic because we're meant to look at the whole. So that's just where the training is then. So how do you look at the whole? How do you learn compensation patterns? Of course, that's what I train on because that's how I work. So if you are looking for more training on that, then get it so that you don't feel overwhelmed about the whole. And does it take more than a weekend workshop? I think it does. I think it takes a while to put the whole thing together. I do. Not a lifetime, but it takes a while. So be fair with yourself and any training that you sign up for, and not expect the moon to be hung because you showed up for a 6-hour training. Like, be realistic and like committed, and then implement it. Meaning go back and look at the body as a whole, take in new information, strategize on what that means, and et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So number one is when a client comes in and they have pain in a particular spot, or you're working on a particular spot and not getting anywhere, you got to look at the whole. And we've established now that looking at the whole and understanding the whole takes a minute. So what does that look like? It looks like knowing how movement is created in the body, knowing that bones are movable only at joints. The bones themselves don't move. If that were the case, then there's probably a break in them. So the joints are where the movement happens. And what does that mean functionally? It means that where two bones meet, they must be aligned. And where those two bones meet and are aligned, they're aligned based on their connective tissue and their muscles. And then what muscles do that work? And again, it takes a minute, not a lifetime, but it takes a minute to learn all of those parts. We have training for that. There's other places that have training for that too. If you don't have the training yet, if you don't have that knowledge, it will be hard for you and you will feel overwhelmed. And I don't want that for you. Again, back to my initial intention. I want you guys to feel pretty badass and satisfied at the end of the day. I want you to be like, I got it. I know, and I implement. And so that's what I want for you. Okay. This is a piece that I think is hugely missing. How's that landing? Is that making sense to you guys? Are you all like, yes, nods? Okay, good. Yay. Cool, great. Okay, great. The next thing that I believe is super important in the ease of it for you, meaning if you took this with you into your treatment setting with every client, it would be easier for you to do the strategizing. Okay. And what I'm requesting that you take with you there are certain laws of the body that if you know them and you take them with you, it will stop the swirl that happens. All the caramel sauce that's mixing with the vanilla ice cream up here that makes you go, oh God, it will cut through that noise if you just go back to what you know, meaning the laws, sort of sounds like law. My point. If you take them with you as laws of the body, they're not waverable. You don't waver in the presence of them. It brings you back to a place of clarity. It brings you back to a place of starting point. It creates a groundedness for you. So I mentioned some of them already. More than 80% of the pain in the body is referred from somewhere else. Right out of the gate, I know I get to look holistically. Okay, good. And then pause. Don't freak out about that. There's other laws of the body too. What laws of the body do you guys know? What laws do you know that ground you every time? Pop quiz. What laws do you know that ground you every time?
I don't know if this is a law, but it just came to me. That muscles move bones.
Absolutely. Muscles move bone. Yep. So if you're looking at, some of you do, I know obviously my mastery practitioners, you work on bony structures and alignment of them. I need to know the bone, but the muscles move that bone. So I've got to address those muscles to get the bone to move. Have I addressed those muscles? Mm-hmm. Right? And so now you start getting into, oh, did I do that? Is my treatment plan complete? Great, Lori, I love it. What other laws do you know? What other laws do you know about the body?
I also go back to what grounds me. This is just what grounds me. I don't know if it's a law, is the joint action. Like that always, like sometimes I get down a rabbit hole with muscles and I'm like, well, what joint is that muscle not going over, but what am I trying to say? It goes over and makes the joint move when it crosses, right?
Exactly.
So when I sometimes get down a rabbit hole, that brings me back. What's the joint? What's the muscle that crosses that? That's what's making movement. And then I'm back in the game. I'm not like, yeah.
Yeah, so good, Lori. And it's good for both manual and movement practitioners. I see practitioners sort of like exhaust themselves in the treatment setting by going after a whole bunch of muscles. Great, I love it. I love the enthusiasm. And the question is, why that muscle? Right? If it doesn't need your attention, save your bandwidth so that you can target what you're after and not exhaust yourself in the work and also confuse the body. Right? If you're working on muscles to get them to do something for you and they don't need your attention right now, and the person's nervous system is what we're working with also because they're in pain, and now we've given the nervous system a whole lot more to calculate. Not only are we exhausted by running around our own tail, but we've also probably confused the body that we're trying to, create correction and movement and ease around. Can't do that. Can't overload the nervous system. It doesn't work. That's why for those of you in the, for those of you here who are massage therapists, there's a reason why the length of massage matters. It shouldn't be a certain, you shouldn't do deep tissue work for 2 hours. It's too much for the nervous system. There's all kinds of training about that. And I get it. People have their own opinions. The bottom line is you're working with the nervous system, and what is the nervous system calibrating? When someone's coming in with pain, they are already on high calibration. They are already in sympathetic. Giving them a whole lot more to do does not support their rehab. Right? So again, I got a little bit carried away there, but what muscle are you working on, and does it need you? So earlier this week in our student lounge, actually, I put a pop quiz in there and a picture of a client and what I had done, just to see how the conversation would go, because it takes bravery to put your comments in there in writing. And I love that all of you contributed. So thank you for that. And one of the comments that I gave back was, cool, I'm glad that you called out all the muscles. Why those muscles? And so to your point, Lori, like, what's the joint action? It's a law of the body. We didn't make those up. Somebody named them. That's the way a hinge joint works. That's the way a ball and socket joint works. Can't change that. It's not an opinion. It's the way it's designed. Law, right? This is what I know, a law of the body. And a muscle or muscles moves that joint into that action. So I need to know all of the actions available at that joint, because it's different muscles that do them. And then once I know the muscles that do that action, then I can address those muscles, just those, not all of them in the area, right? Like if you're thinking about the hips or the pelvis, anything around the sacrum or the acetabulum or any of the bony landmarks in the pelvis, ton of available movement. It's a 360 joint, which means a ton of muscles that do all that movement. First of all, it wouldn't even be prudent for you to try to address all of them in a setting, in one session, for time reasons and nervous system reasons, and also why. But if you got clear on what the action was that wasn't happening or that you wanted to happen, then you narrow it down to what muscles are involved in that action, either the action that's happening or the action that isn't happening. Then you make it super concise, and your clients say things like, how did you know to go there? Well, because I just listened. I just listened to the body. I know that this is how the body's designed. I got holistically, found out where I needed to go, found out what the joint action is, the muscles that do that action, and boom, targeted. It really is that simple. You have to know, like, I'm not saying that it's simple and you should know better. Like, of course, we're all learning. When you know, you know. And then so go to what you know. Don't make up shit in the treatment setting. That's another thing that happens where practitioners just sort of like start tossing noodles at the wall, you know, like it's a tossed salad or a spaghetti bowl. And it's like, just pause, take a deep breath. What do you know? I know this joint action. I know these, great, narrowed, instead of the whole thing and the whole body. Okay, great. What other laws is the question? And Laura, I saw you put in the chat, stretching doesn't exist. Right. And so you're right on to our anatomy principles. Again, you know, I outline these very clearly. And I get it that it's a provocative statement. It's meant to shake us up. And there's other places that say, no, we're absolutely stretching. And there's even certified stretch therapists who would probably feel insulted or thrown under the bus. It's not meant to do any of that. It's meant to get us clear on what we know about how the body's designed. So when stretching doesn't exist, do you want to say more about that, Laura? Like, what does that mean for all the people in the world who are like, of course stretching exists, I'm a stretch person? Do you want to say more about that?
Well, I think what you say in your thing here is that the brain doesn't have the actual, wasn't it like the brain doesn't have the command to actually like stretch? It's more that you have to be able, it knows how to contract. And so if you're contracting on one side, you're usually lengthening on the other.
Exactly.
The lever system and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. So the lever system is another law of the body, right? It's built, that's the way the body's built to move. One side of the joint does the contraction and the other side of the joint responds to that contraction by stretching. But there's no first command from the brain to tell the body to stretch. If that were the case, we would stretch all night while we're sleeping, but we can't.
And you know what I think about too, Gina, is like, let's say like when you're like you get scared or something and someone scares you, like your body contracts. Your body, but if you just sit here and say, okay, body stretch, you don't say but you can contract actually pretty easily, like without
love that
much, right?
Love that, Laura. I love that. And your example of like fright, that is a nervous system response, So it's like you're giving us that's a great analogy. I'm probably going to use that now because I love that. And I will credit you every time, because automatically, even without thinking, you can contract, but automatically without thinking, automatically with thinking, deliberately intending, you can't stretch by just sitting. Right. So, but muscles do lengthen, like that actually does happen. Origins and insertions do move away. Like there is an actual thing that happens with lengthening, but it's not a nervous system command. There's no, from the mothership, that's not happening, which means for us, a different way of approaching rehab, a different way of approaching functional discrepancies. If I know that something isn't moving the way I need it to move for that person to be out of pain, then I'm going to go look at what's doing the movement moving. And I need to know how movement is generated. First by contracting, then by lengthening in response. So Rhonda, your question is lengthening equals releasing. Are you asking, are they the same thing? Do you want to come off, Mike? Yeah, come off, Mike. Ask your question. I want to make sure I answer it thoroughly. That matters to me.
Yeah, I was just questioning, are they synonymous? Do they mean the same thing? So when one muscle is contracting, is its opposing muscle releasing, or, is lengthening releasing?
Yeah, I like the distinction. And I'm not going to say it's semantics because it's not. And I also know you're a manual practitioner, so the distinction is real. So in movement, the way the body moves, lengthening is in response to contraction. Okay. In manual work, releasing can be lengthening, meaning a muscle that lengthens can release tension or release a joint that's not fully moving in its optimal availability of joint action. And in manual work, we can also release other things, right? We have different tools and skills with our thumbs and our fingers, if you will, where there's adhesions or trigger points or trigger in a muscle where we actually are releasing a response, even a chemical response inside a muscle. That doesn't mean we're necessarily lengthening it.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Lynn, I'm glad you're here. Okay, so what other laws? So hopefully knowing the laws, this is what we're up to here. Knowing the laws gets us clear on what we're up to so that we can start to solve a problem, right? And feel like really confident about that. Let's come up with one more law, at least one more. What's one more law that you know about the body that can guide you towards my next steps?
I have one that I always go back to. I'm not sure it's your top 5, is that, and this is, I don't remember when you said it, but it's been landing a lot recently. Like our bodies are designed to move. So when somebody comes in and says, with restrictions in their body, that's a better word, restrictions in their body, like, oh, I can't do this. I'm like, but our bodies are designed to move. So, and then it goes back to the whole 80% of pain is referred from somewhere else and joint and all of that.
I like that one, Lori. And I don't have a top 5, by the way. I just have the ones that I know. In fact, actually, a couple of weeks ago, I started compiling a list. I was like, maybe I could make this into a workbook. So it's coming, but I don't have them written down. It's just a matter of what do you know? Like, what do you know that's not disputable? Hinge joints, ball and socket joints, lever systems. We can't dispute this. This is the way the body's designed, and it's been confirmed 100 times. It's not a matter of opinion. That's what I mean by laws. Like, this is what we know. And then there's also laws not about design, but about responsiveness, like diagonals and recruitment, right? Like, these aren't like the way it's designed, but it's the law. Like, this is how the response will be based on what we know about the body. So both of those things are in the idea of laws. And I love your viewpoint on this one, Lori, because one of the things that saddens me is when yoga teachers specifically, because my movement is dance and personal training and yoga, but I spend a lot of time with yoga teachers. And I love the do no harm, like, let's just do a modification so that you're not in pain while you're here in my class. And then the plight for the yoga teacher who's also looking to, eliminate pain and restore function, modifying doesn't do that. You'll never restore function by modifying away from function that's not functional. The only way to restore function is to return it to how it's designed. So I love the concept of do no harm and modify away. And if you as a movement practitioner are looking to restore function and remove pain, modifying is not going to get you there. So we are designed to move. And so the question is, what movement is meant to be happening here? And it takes us back to all the things we already talked about. Is this meant to be extension of the hip? Is this meant to be rotation of the hip? They're not the same. Is this person doing extension of the hip with rotation? And now they've brought in a whole other host of muscles that aren't meant to be there, that are fatiguing, because that's not the way the body's designed. So what movement is meant to be here? Are they doing just that movement, or are they hybriding it? And that's what's causing the problem, because that's a super easy fix. So what's the movement that's meant to happen at that joint? And this applies for manual practitioners too. If you got someone that comes in with soreness in their one hip and not the other, you need to know how they're moving, because that's an asymmetry. So you can dig your elbows in for the whole 60 minutes if you want to, but when they stand up off your table and walk over to the chair to get dressed again, guess what? They involve both their hips in movement. So you need to know this, right? Whether you're manual or movement, it's the same. How is the movement impeded? Is it unclear lever systems, or is it something that gets to be addressed? And that could be a couple things. It could be alignment of the structure. Of course, it's one of the things we do in our method. It could be restoring the lever system. The muscle that's meant to do contraction isn't, or the muscle that's meant to lengthen isn't. Figure out why, and then reestablish the lever system. So there's a couple reasons why it could not be happening. But the first step is what's meant to be happening. What is the action that's meant to be happening here at this joint? And is it just a matter of tidying up the movement, or is there something else that's come up that's made the person move askew? And the only way to know that is by measuring them and doing all the things that we do in our method, or whatever tools you have if you guys aren't in our academy. And also, I just want to say, can I brag about you guys? Can I brag about you guys? Okay, good. Thank you. So for those of you who know, if you know, you know. For those of you who know, our mastery program is a year-long track that starts every year in July. And so it's once a year, it's, and we travel hard and mighty together for that year. And Lori is somebody from a very initial beta training, which I feel like I owe you for that, because, the first time we do something, it's never our best. And so I was doing my best at that time, and I've only gotten better, but Lori was right there with me at the very beginning going like, you got this, and I want in. And so, so that's been a fun ride. And then since then, Lori, for those of you who can see the name, I don't think it shows on YouTube, but an anatomy advocate. Are you looking, Lori? Does it show your name? I don't think it shows our names on YouTube. I thought you were looking. Anyway,
I don't know about YouTube. Yeah.
I know on Zoom it does. Anyway, so anatomy advocate, one of the pillars inside our community is support, right? Like that's why I'm here every week, to support you. And so there's a few mastery graduates who join me like-minded, and they come in to also support. And so they're volunteers, and they've been through the rigor, and they're here to support our community and lift everybody up, and support around training and accountability, but also like, what training do you need? Like, what was the course that really moved the needle for me? And so Lori's been volunteering as an anatomy advocate since last fall, which is amazing. And she's such a badass. She's coming back. She's going to be like, I'm drinking up all the juice out of this lemon. So that's super exciting. We're going to like see each other every single week more than we already do, which is beautiful. And Laura, who's been at our Tuesday trainings here on Tuesdays for a minute, actually, I think it's been a couple years. She's like, okay, 2 years, 3 years. How long has it been? A couple. So Laura's joining us for the mastery track too. So we're graduating a group of beautiful beings this week. We're having our beautiful graduation ceremony. And then next week, bam, we start right back at it. And so Laura is going to be joining us this year. Can't wait to get my hands on you because it'll just be super fun. Tuesdays are amazing. Like, don't be nervous. It won't hurt. It won't hurt. And you'll be in good company if it does. No, I'm just kidding. It doesn't hurt. We just learn a lot. That's all. We learn and we implement, And this time next year, Laura, you will not be the same. You mark my word on that. So on a Tuesday training a year from now, you get to come back and be like, she was right. In fact, it happens a lot sooner than that. It's usually around the 4-month mark that practitioners really start feeling the stretch. Like, wow, this is totally different. And then by 9 months in, your practice even looks different. Like what you do for a living and who you serve and how you serve them looks different. So by this time next year, Laura, you get to come back and be like, I remember when, mark our words, 2023, and then a year from now. So I'm super excited for you guys and welcome. And I also love that you guys show up every week, right? I love that all of you are here, whether you're live and make time for that or watching on the replay. Lights me up that you're here to create more for yourself, because that means that you're supporting people that you serve in greater ways. Love that. And the fact that you guys are in mastery and you're like, I'm drinking every drop out of this lemon, like, just lights me up. Like, you guys are exceptional. So I love being here for a million reasons, and you two are wonderful role models. So thank you for showing up. Okay, welcome, Marilyn. Glad to see you. And I believe a couple other people came in too. Cynthia, nice to have you here. Pauline, great to have you. Yep, I think I said hi to everybody so far. Okay, great. So, so the third thing, we're talking about client work and how to resolve, like, what do I need to be able to solve the problem? What do I need to be able to have anybody come to me with any functional discrepancy or any pain complaint, and strategically think through what it is, what's causing it, and what do I do about it? Right? So those are slightly different things. What do I see? What's being presented? What's causing what I see and what they're complaining about? Because it's not always, again, it's not always where the chief complaint is. And then what tools do I have to utilize to restore them back to a pain-free experience? Right? Okay. So what tools do you have? And all of us who are here have tools, right? Like, even in our mastery track, you've got to come already like a great practitioner. You got to already come doing what you do, being who you be, a badass trainer, an amazing yoga teacher, thoroughly vetted massage therapist, and everything in between. Like, you got to come already like, I'm up to it. I know my game is big and I'm here to play, right? Like, you get to come like that. So in that bigness, you've already come with tools. First of all, your initial certification or license, whatever that was, gave you tools. You either learned how to use your hands, or you learned how to address movement, or whatever else you came with. And I've not yet met a practitioner who comes here to join us who hasn't also done some continuing education. Every time you go to continuing education, you get more tools, including how you think. That's a tool, right? Strategic thinking is a tool. So maybe you didn't learn myofascial release as a massage therapist, or maybe you didn't learn hip openers or handstands as a yoga teacher, or however it applies to you as a practitioner. Maybe what you learn in a particular training was how to think differently about the body's design, and how to think through a yoga class or a training session or a full massage or therapeutic massage instead of relaxation. Like, maybe what you learned is how to think differently with the tools you already have. So all tools count. Skill set tools and strategy tools all matter, because especially when you're working on pain and eliminating pain and restoring function, you have to know how to think through that. One of the things that I loved about doing regular massage, when I did a lot of that, was that it became kind of rote. And not because I was disconnected or not paying attention. On the contrary, the less I was in my head and the more I was just in the moment going through what I was going through, felt really parasympathetic, very zen, very relaxing, the opposite of mental, the opposite of thinking. And I loved it, because, I mean, who doesn't want to meditate all day and feel like joyful at the end of the day? but it is physical. And so for those of you who are like, I don't feel like that at the end of my day, there's a lot of reasons for that, including working and not getting paid. Like there's a lot of reasons why you won't feel zen. But the rhythmic nature of full body massage and the parasympathetic value of it is rhythmic and not stimulating, not sympathetic, not mental chatter. I love that. And that's not how we solve problems. It's not how we strategize to solutions. So if you're in that space of like wanting it to be automatic where you don't have to think, you're making it harder for yourself to solve the problem. If you're thinking that getting people out of pain is going to feel like flow state, yes, because you're not nervous anymore, but you have to think. You've got to use your brain more than your hands to solve the problem. If that's what you're doing, if that's what you're solving, if you're solving orthopedic problems, physical restrictions, functional discrepancies, it's a brain game. And yes, you bring your tools that you've got to support you, and you got to be present. You know, like one of the things that relaxes me now is being able to think through to a solution, because there's a resolution every time, instead of just thinking and getting like sort of in psychological assessment about what's in front of me. Thinking through the solution is relaxing for me, but my body's not relaxed because I've been thinking all day, if that makes sense. There's a difference. So I would use for movement, I would say the same as like a restorative type of class. It's a different energy, right? Than when you're solving problems, different energy in you than when you're solving problems for folks. Do you get to be calm and grounded? Of course, especially when they're in pain, but you get to be present. Your mental energy is part of the tool that you bring with you. And then what you do with that brain, what you do with that tool and that ability to think through is what we've mentioned so far. What am I seeing? What are they telling me? Meaning that's the subjective part of your intake and the objective part of your intake. For those of you who do SOAP charting, I teach that in our mastery practitioner track because it's important whether you're a yoga teacher or not. It gives you lots of different data. Most practitioners do not get enough information before they start working. You guys make it really hard on yourselves by diving in to try to hang the moon for someone before you even know where the hook is. Like if you don't have the tools to hang the moon, how are you going to hang it? So find out. I don't mean tools like skill set. I mean, if you don't have enough information about where you're going to hang the moon and how high you're going to hang the moon and why the moon needs to be hung and what tools you're going to bring with you to hang the moon, why are you going to start trying to hang the moon? Get more data. There's so much ease in getting the right subjective and objective information, because literally as you stand calm and grounded, ready to go, fully confident you got this, the answers will be revealed to you. It's almost like you didn't have to think, which I know sounds like a contradiction to what I just said. You got a lot of knowledge in your brain, and then you're present to everything that's going on. And then the pieces just lock together. That's the closest to flow state for solving pain problems. If you're still grinding around in your brain, there's a piece missing. And I think it's often you don't have enough information. You don't know what problem you're solving. You know they're in pain, but what are you solving? Like, what is that exactly? And I can hear some of you going, exactly, Gina, that's why I ask you, what's the problem? And that's not the question. That's just not the question. So once you know what you're up to, meaning what are you seeing and what are they saying? And you also have all the laws in the body. This is how it's designed. Without question, this is the design. It's a lever system, it's contraction. This is the muscle that does that. Those types of design answers. When you have all that anatomy, and then you can clearly see the discrepancy. And I'll mention another tool here, your visual assessment. It's not just about testing people's bodies to see if they can do what you're asking them to do, but what are you assessing? What are you seeing? Is there a hybrid joint action happening? Meaning, are they doing lateral rotation and extension of the hip at the same time? And really, they're only meant to be doing one of those. Is that what it is, right? That assessment that we talked about. Use your visual assessment to see clearly what's going on. what's gone awry. And then you bring your tools in that you have, all those tools that you've taken continuing education for, to restore them and return them back to their initial design. You've got to know the initial design first. So one of the shortcuts that I see happening is that practitioners will come to me with a question and say, look, my client has this thing in their shoulder. And what do I do about that? Like, what should I do? And of course, my first question back is, well, what else is going on? Oh, I already took care of all that. I took care of all the other things that are going on. It's only what's left in the shoulder. My appeal and invitation is all those other things that were also there are part of that whole picture we talked about. So how did those other parts that you addressed play into what's going on in the shoulder? Maybe there's another layer there that hasn't been addressed. Maybe not. I don't know. Person's not in front of me. But we don't want to look at the body like in a secular way. Of course, we're addressing a chief complaint, but how does that present in the whole? We know that the one spot is not necessarily where it's coming from. So where is it coming from? Especially if you've already navigated other things in their body, you know there was other things that were going on. How do they contribute to the shoulder? That's when you use your laws. How does it contribute to the shoulder? Based on diagonals, compensation patterns, fascia lines, whatever else you're trained in to see. How does it contribute? And then where do I get to insert either a tool or some optimized function to return them back to a pain-free state? Those are the questions that I would ask. Sounds a little like, I think, theory until we're actually walking through it. Here's what I'll share with you guys. In our mastery track, we spend about 6 weeks on just solid case studies. And I always laugh at that part, not because it's funny, I'm not laughing at anybody, but I always laugh at that part because literally that's where everybody wants to start. Just give me the client and give me the solution, and then we're off to the races. And I'm like, cool, that's exactly what we're gonna do. Here's all this knowledge I want you to have to be able to get there. And so by the time we get to case studies, we're like, finally. And in all honesty, I will tell you 100% of the time, I always ask honestly, do you feel like before we got to this point, you could have had this conversation legitimately? And they're all like, no, I didn't know enough to even get here. Okay, great. Thanks for the honesty. So I get it. You all want to get there. I want you to get there too. Remember, I've said that from the start here. I want you to be in a treatment setting with your clients, resolving their problems for sure, their physical musculoskeletal problems. So we spend, a good 6 weeks concentrated on full case studies instead of piecemealing them as we do. We drip feed them through the program, of course. And almost 99% of them, we pause on what's the body presenting with and what do you know about the body's design? Not that body, but what do you know anatomically? What's your functional anatomy base to even address their problem? What is that telling you? When someone presents with a discrepancy, what's that telling you? What's that telling you about the design and the interruption in the flawless design? What's it telling you about the laws in the body? What law is at play here? Which one do you get to insert your knowledge around? What tools do you have in your toolbox to address those imbalances? And then we get into and now go ahead and do it, and did it work? Like I'm telling you, I promise you, that's what happens. So I'm sharing that with you guys because it might sound a little sort of conceptual and like, I don't even know if I got any value from this training today. Those steps are madly important before the doing. It's like the knowledge that you come to the treatment setting with and the ability to strategically think is paramount to what you do in the treatment setting. I promise you. Okay, so I'm looking around the screen and you guys are all looking a little starstruck, like, oh God, what did she just say? I would love to hear what's coming up for you. What's going on? What's landing? What questions do you have? Sometimes I get it straight and sometimes I get to clarify something I've said. So tell me what your experience is. I'd love it. What's going on? Nobody. You're all like, you good? Feeling great about it? You're like, good, I'm ready to go. I know what's up.
So
like,
I
yeah.
like, yeah, I'll throw this out there. I like, and you've said it before, and today it's landing differently because it does, is the steps, right? Like, what do I see with the client presenting with and saying? And then I inserted in there, like the design. What do I know about the law of our body's design? I love that right there. Yeah.
Great.
I know you've said that multiple times today. I'm like, this is the first time I've ever heard it. You know what I mean? Like, it lands when it lands.
It totally does. It totally, and I love that you're bringing that up, Lori, because sometimes we're like super hard on ourselves because we heard it, but it didn't click. Like I heard it, but I don't know what that means. It lands when it lands. Like it clicks when it clicks. We get to repeat it. So if you've been to, hundreds of hours of workshops and you're still learning, great, you're right on track. There's no failure in that, right? Nobody's an expert on everything that there is about the body, including me. I'm an expert at what I do. Like I would hope that I would be, or I shouldn't be teaching you, but I don't know everything. I know really well what I know. I know what, I know how I work and how I get results. That's what I want to share with you. I don't want to share with you something I don't know. So be really thoughtful when you guys are assessing what you know and who else is in the room. They just might know a different bit of knowledge than you do. I'm sure you're badass in a different track that you don't need repeated, right? So repeat it until it doesn't need to be repeated anymore, and then utilize it right away, right? So thank you.
What else, Gina, about that, the design, it feels very comforting today. Like, oh, I've got something that doesn't necessarily move. It's no like moving parts. It's like, this is how we're designed. Go to that. And I'm like, got it. And then bounce off from there. Yeah, that feels real. It feels real nice.
Yeah, totally. When I learned that, thank you for bringing that up. When I learned that, for some of you who I also am trained in a lot of energy work and, empaths, and I'm in that world as well. I'm, it's a good thing my feet are big, so I'm grounded. Because sometimes we can get a little out there. And so for a long time, when I was working at the beginning, I didn't understand all the sensations that were coming up. Like I could feel someone's headache, even if they didn't tell me they had a headache. And then I'd have to confirm with them that this pain that I had behind my right eye was actually theirs. And that's kind of spooked me for a while because I didn't really know what to do with all that. I'm cool now, like I got it. But the point is I can pick up a lot in the room. And so it would distract me at first. And so the way that I learned this piece that you just highlighted for us is that rather than get all wrapped up in either my somatic experiencing or any emotional stuff that they were bringing up, because people come in pain, there's an emotion involved in that. There just is. Nobody's chill about their pain. They're usually in a panic, right? The way that I centered myself in the midst of that was to just go with what I know, go with the laws of the body, go with the data, the anatomical data, and that would give me a through line in which to work so that I didn't swirl with all of the energy and emotions that were also in the room. And then I can be present to them because I had an agenda. Like I was not going to be dissuaded. The body was going to guide me towards next steps. And so it's really a valuable tool. And I learned it early out of necessity. So Laura says, can't wait till next week. I can't wait either. Can't wait for you guys to start. I think also as you work with people, you hear something again through a different lens and it lands differently. Absolutely. Especially when you're implementing. Rhonda, I'm here because I know that I need more functional anatomy training. God, just like me, Rhonda, I love it. I'm planning on doing that class of yours, just waiting for the present life chaos to clear in the fall so that I can have the time and concentration to study. Totally love it. So I'm not sure what class you're talking about, but you are welcome to take any course. And certainly if the mastery program is appealing to you, you can talk to us about that as well. I really wish we had another hour because I want to tell you how many people this week I've heard say, look, Rhonda, with all respect, I've heard a lot of people say just this week how life is whatever. Life is lifing. It's, finances or health or schedules or all the things, which always happen to all of us all the time. And I was in the shower this morning thinking, gosh, I wish that it was enough anatomy based that I could invite us all to consider both and. Like, how could we have life and not take ourselves out of the game and not feel like we have to put our head down like a ram and ram ourselves through it, but be with it. And it's definitely it's a life skill set for sure to learn and evolve with as we go. But my wish for all of us is that the vision that we're carrying and the dream on our heart be made manifest without delay. That we allow ourselves to also author our life and what we have going on and not let life dictate what we're allowed to have. It's just a different energy around that. So I hear you, Rhonda, and I'm holding space for you that you get to come and join us to whatever extent and sooner than later. Lori says yes. Okay, Lori, good. I'm glad you're here. Lori, I was gonna, different Lori who's off camera. I was gonna email you because I saw that you logged in with us last week too, and I'm really glad that you're here. So thank you for showing up again for us. Okay, my loves, for you actually, not for us, but for you. Finally, okay, good, yep. Maybe it's, I don't know how many times it is, maybe it's third time's a charm. Okay, babes, so thank you all for showing up and for your contributions and for all the work that you're doing to better yourselves as a practitioner, because your clients are super lucky to have you. And if they haven't told you that recently, they feel it, and I know that. So on behalf of them, I'm letting you know they are your client because they know, like, and trust you, and they believe in you. And so even if they don't know that you're here getting more training, somehow instinctively they do know it. And that's why they keep showing up for you. So thank you for showing up for them and for all the amazing work that you're doing in the world. Continue to contribute in that way. And I will continue to be here on Tuesdays to support you. Next week in the US, we have a holiday. So I'm guessing that most of you won't be here. I might log on anyway, just to see who wants to show up. And otherwise, I'll definitely be back for regular scheduling 2 weeks from today when there is not a holiday. So noon Eastern, 2 weeks from today. And next week, of course, if you have nothing to do and it's a holiday and you want to just log on, that's cool too. Okay, babes, I'll see you guys. My pleasure, Lynn. Thank you. Thank you, Lori. It's good to see you too. Bye, everybody. I'll see you guys.